For all you sales consultants out there, I just want to share the most common objection you're going to find if, in fact, you don't follow the steps to the sale. I mean, from the meet and greet all the way through the needs assessment into the vehicle presentation, demonstration, and then sit them down on your desk and discussing the price. That's what I'm talking about. You got to follow every single step. You did a nice job in getting the customer into the showroom. And let's face it, 80% of the customer's job is done online. You drag them into your dealership, or you influence them to come to your dealership. They get to your dealership and you misstep. And then they say at the end, one of the most common objections that I hear, I want to think about it. Now, what do? What's there to think about? You've done all your research. This is the car you want. And then you go to that old school, that old car dog, the 3 P's or the 3 M's, money, machine, me, product, person, place. Not the right way to approach it today. People don't have the attention span. They don't have the patience anymore. They want to come to your dealership and they want to buy the car. They've done all their research. Now it's up to you to follow the right steps, because one of the most common objections that you're going to get is, I want to think about it. And you got to be able to handle it. So stop with the old school tactic of saying to the customer, what's there to think about? Is it the money? Is it the machine? Or is it me? It must be me if it's not the money in the machine. Or if it's not me or the machine, it must be the money. That's not the way to do it. Or the 3 P's. It must be me, the person. Oh, if it's not me, then it must be the price. If it's not the price, then it must be the product or the place. I don't get it. What's there to think about? Here's the way you should handle it today. After you do a wonderful meet and greet when the customer gets to the showroom, and you sit them down, or you discuss what their true needs are, their true wants, you ask them questions like, what research have you done so far? What inspired you to come to our dealership? What attracted you to this particular vehicle, or the options, or the equipment that you're requiring? Why is it so important to have that equipment? You got to ask them these questions. What other vehicles are you considering? Considering, not looking at. I mean, think about that question. What other vehicles are you looking at? That's a wide spectrum of vehicles that they looked at versus what other vehicles are you considering? So when you do this wonderful step to the sale, and you've done that wonderful meet and greet, you've determined the customer's true wants and needs because you asked all those right questions. And by the way, you can pick up those questions on prodprep.com. You should visit that site, take a test drive, because we have all the answers there. And I'm about to share with you what I feel is one of the best techniques for when a customer says, I want to think about it. Remember, it all takes following the steps of the sale. You did a great job in getting the customer to the dealership. Do a great job in following the additional steps. And I think one of the most important steps in the sales process is the needs assessment. You got to ask those questions. What research have you done? What attracted you to this particular vehicle? What inspired you to come to our dealership? What other vehicles are you considering, and why are these options so important to you? What features and why are these features so important to you? Now let's go take a look at the vehicle and pull that vehicle out of the line and open those doors up and do that spaced walk around. Point out the safety features, point out the performance features, point out the accessories, the convenience and the comfort and the economy and the dependability. That's the spaced walk around. And get them in that car and take them for a test drive. And then when you get them back to the dealership, look right at them and say, what you think of the ride? Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10. They give you an 8. They give you a 7. They give you a 5. I don't know. All right? And then ask them, do you want the car? And they may say to you something like this when you ask them, do you want the car? That all depends. Now we know what it depends on, okay? Because the last step in the sales process is the discussion of price, the presentation of the numbers. Be confident. Go to the sales tower, get those numbers and put them right in front of the customer's face and say, these are the figures. You got any questions? Ask them, you have any questions? They say, I don't have any questions. And then just look at them and say, do you want the car? And they say, I want the car. And then you say, well, then take it home today. And then they say to you, well, I want to think about it. Don't go to the 3 P's, as I mentioned before, and don't go to the 3 M's, person, place, price, money, machine, me. Go to what other vehicles are you considering? Because if you followed all the right steps, the only reason the customer is refusing to take delivery of the vehicle today and they state to you they want to think about it, then obviously they must be considering something else. And if they're not considering something else, you got to get to the true objection. You got to probe. So start off when a customer says, I want to think about it. Sounds great, but I want to think about it. You know, I'm really not sure. I want to think about it. Look right at them and say, do you mind if I ask you a question, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? It seems to me you really like this car. My question would be, what other vehicles are you considering? Because in my mind, and what you shared with me, this is the car you want. So obviously you must be considering something else. And they say to you, well, I'm considering this or I'm considering that, and then make comparisons, the vehicle they just drove to the vehicle that they're considering. And ask them, when you test drove the other vehicle, don't ask them if they test drove the vehicle. Look right at them and say, when you test drove the other vehicle, how did it compare to the vehicle you just test drove today? And I gotta tell you something. Human nature would say that they remember what they just drove unless that other vehicle was phenomenal, okay? And then when they say, well, this car drove a little bit better, or maybe they say the other car drove a little better, ask them, what is the difference between the ride in the vehicle you're considering versus the ride in the vehicle that you drove today? Probe. Get to the real objection. Maybe they didn't test drive the other vehicle and they want to. Make comparisons online. Your vehicle compared to the vehicle that they're considering. Point out all the benefits and features that this vehicle has compared to the other vehicle that they're considering. Show some salesmanship and get that customer engaged in the conversation. And before you know it, they're not going to want to think about it anymore. And if they still want to think about it, just simply look at them and say, look, you're not considering any other vehicles. Are you considering the other vehicle? And you like the ride of this vehicle? What's preventing you from moving forward today? There's got to be something. And maybe they say they have to speak to their spouse. Or maybe they say they think they can get a better deal. Or maybe they say that they just not ready to make a move right now because they have to move some funds. Whatever they say, probe, dig deeper. And that's how you get customers to reverse the decision to think about it, by asking the right questions and getting them engaged in the conversation. So I want to sum it up this way. After you've done a wonderful presentation on the vehicle, you've test driven the vehicle, the customer's shown interest in the vehicle, you presented numbers to the vehicle, and the customer looks at you and says, well, everything sounds good, but I just want to think about it. Look right at them and say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I want to ask you a question. Do you mind if I ask you a question? And they're going to say, go right ahead, because you've earned the right. And you look them right in the eye and you say, what other vehicles are you considering, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? And they look at you and say, I'm considering this, or I'm not considering any other vehicles. And you probe, and then you ask them, what's preventing you from moving forward today? And they'll tell you if they're engaged in the conversation. I want to remind you that all this information is at prodprep.com. Take a test drive today. Until next time, go get them.